Hey everyone, welcome to the FNG Author Podcast. This is episode 4, and we are talking about character development today. With me is Gary and Will, and we are going to rock some stuff and give you guys some great insights into what it takes to write good characters. We're all new authors, or relatively new authors, and we are trying to figure all this out together and hope you are right along with us. So with that, you guys have anything you want to add right off the bat?
Well,
should we just jump into the questions?
Well, we can jump into the questions, or we can go into the broader stuff, like character archetypes, blah, blah, blah. But I might be going down into the weeds. So let's...
Well, would you say, Will, that Ed, Brent, all your characters, especially your first ones, are people you knew? Or a conglomerate of people you knew? Or even some that are yourself?
Well, yeah, the human experience will filter into your different archetypes. You have your antagonist, right? Nobody wants a static antagonist. You want it to be dynamic. You want it to be scary. You want it to be somewhat relatable, so that way you can humanize the antagonist in a certain way. Perhaps, unless your antagonist is an alien, then it gets a little complicated. But but I'm just saying, writing a human character has got to sound genuine. And those archetypes, your protagonist and your antagonist have to be equally well developed to balance out the narrative.
But with that, they don't need to be overthought either.
Exactly.
That's what sometimes I find. I find when I read some certain characters, like no names, no pact rule, but it's kind of like, either this person hurt you, or this character doesn't fit for some reason. And usually, I find it's because somebody overthought that character too much. Like I like having my characters grow throughout.
Do you guys want to start over?
Start over? No, we're not quitters. We're not quitters.
I'm just I guess what I was asking if you guys want to add anything, you want to plug your books? Do you want to say anything about where you're at in your writing journey, in your what we got going on with our personal projects, or that's kind of where I was going with that. But
okay, well, Survivor's War is now out for week 2. Survival of the Fittest comes out in July. Still writing Survival at All Cost. My wife wants me to clean the kitchen later. And I have to walk the dogs. That is what is going on with Gary right now at this point in my life.
Yeah.
Jealous.
Me, I am 89,000 words into book 3 of the Children of Earth, which is
great accomplishment.
Children of Earth trilogy is kind of like I don't want to say a reverse alien invasion story. It's basically, it starts off with Earth and its colonies already being conquered. And it goes from basically the whole storyline is liberating Earth. And it's been a long journey. It's been a lot of hand-pecking. It's been 6 months worth of work, but I'm in the final 10,000 pages. Or, excuse me, 10,000 words.
10,000 words.
Not pages.
10,000 pages. Woo!
No, I think...
War and Peace, the sequel.
When it's done, we're looking at 1,500 pages for the trilogy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good. Well, Outlaw Stars for me is I am plugging away. I'm about 20,000 words into book 3. So roughly a sixth of the way there. I tend to come in like at about 120,000 words, and I can't seem to get less than that. So I'm just too
Don't try for it.
I think. Yeah. It'd be nice to be able to kick something out at 100,000 words, and I tend to be a little bit too verbose for that. So that's me.
Just do it on book 2 and leave it as a cliffhanger.
Yeah, exactly right. Have a novella in the middle there someplace that I can sell for another $3 or $4. So,
right.
Yeah, they don't sell. Trust me, I tried.
Have you tried it?
Yeah, I've tried it. It doesn't work.
I want to talk a little bit today. We started talking about character arcs, and you guys actually covered a broad range of stuff to begin with. And we'll go through and we'll hit kind of on each one of those things as we work through some questions. But when you guys start building this character from scratch, and Gary, you hit on this. Where do you guys pull your characters from? And it sounds like people around you is one of the main things that you do. But how do we as authors, where do they come from? Like where are they coming from?
So I can tell you right now, my main character, Alexander Kane in Survivor's War, he is a mix. There's me in there. There's some good friends of mine in there. There's even a couple of people I don't like in there. Because when I started this book, I knew how it started and how it came out. Two different stories. Like I was going to have like the Vathari were the Celestials, but then that's been overdone. So I want to do originality, make something more. And instead of Iraq and Afghanistan, I wanted to have it a bit more in the 80s because I also feel it's important that new readers remember stuff that happened. So when I chose the Marine barracks as the catalyst for Alexander Kane's downward spiral into like the PTSD, even though I don't technically call it PTSD in the book, that's what he's going through. He becomes a drifter. He's a loner, how all of us are when we leave the military, really. And as well as then your first responders as well.
Sure.
And it's like, so I wanted to make it something that was believable, but something I could relate to. Now, in the Int world, one of the things that I did a lot was targeting and doing, which wasn't a big deal, blowing up bad people. They were doing bad things. The crappy part was doing what's called a battle damage assessment, where you see body parts, sometimes people still moving. It sucks, and it's kind of funny, and these things are never really talked about, because I would be talking to the pilot of the drone who's usually in Nevada. I'm in Kandahar, and we're talking about this. And so I found that utilizing the American Canadian mindset, and I try to do that throughout my books, is to show more of we're not so different no matter how much the world's trying to say we are right now. And so with Alexander Kane, he is that epiphanous of I use that word wrong. He is that character who did not want to do any of this. He was okay going down the road he was, and now he's up to something greater. Now, that wasn't because I wanted to do something greater myself, but I think we always want to do better than where we are currently in life. So with that's where Alexander Kane was born. He was a crusty old soldier. He had enough of the crap, but he's given a task, and instead of having the melodramatic, woe is me character who constantly questions himself, which he obviously does at first, but then he just like, well, I'm here. This is the way it is. There's nothing I can do about it, which is really every lesson we all learn in first responders and in the military, police forces, wherever. You get to a position, it's okay, well, it doesn't matter how I'm feeling on the inside. It's time to, just do it. And that's how I wanted to write him, was to do that mission.
Yeah. Will, you mentioned archetypes, and that sounds very much like what you're talking about, Gary, is you pulled from a lot of things to build an archetype of your main character. And I think we all do that at some point, right? Like we all have those experiences with people that we pull individual little chunks from to make an amalgamation of someone that you think about. Talk about that a little bit. Well, how you go through that.
Well, I'm a keep it simple kind of person. So if when I'm starting off a project and I'm outlining it and I'm doing a character Bible, I'm very deliberate with the way I formulate my primary character, because that's where you're gonna that's where you're gonna spend most of your time and your headspace as a reader, is through the eyes of this character. So that character's got to be relatable. Like Gary was talking about, bringing these different personalities in together to create it. Now, I try to do my character Bible like, okay, what is a personal flaw of this person? You know, are they too silly? Are they too serious? Do they have a lack of confidence? For example, in my current series, I have an admiral. He's not the main character, but he's a very important character. And he starts off being extremely in self-doubt because of a lack of real-world combat experience. And self-doubt is something that is extremely relatable. We all have it. We all experience it. Imposter syndrome, that kind of thing. So I want to capture those kind of flaws, and then be able to also balance it off with that character's strengths. Are they intelligent? Do they have what is their moral, and that's another thing that people don't really address enough. Where's their moral fiber? You demonstrate it through their actions and how they interact with other characters. But you as the author need to know what that foundation is. You don't have to tell the reader, but you have to know the foundation of that character. And so that way the reader will eventually see what that character is about. And if you execute it well, the reader's expectations should match your character Bible at the end of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. So something else that I thought was kind of a really good question, I think that will define some of this, is how much character backstory do you guys give your characters before you start using them? So I'll tell you on my end, I give them enough to show their motivation, right? Like you have to, your character has to have a little bit of motivation. So if I can give some motivation to the person that I'm putting on the page, it helps me to develop exactly what you're talking about, Will. Like, where do they come from? Like, what's their backstory? What's some of that kind of stuff. I don't need to go into every single detail and give them a birthday and what they got for their they got a third grade certificate for being a best student or something like that. None of that matters. The stuff that matters is specifically how you're going to use that person in the story. And you guys talk about that a little bit. Give me a little heads up on how you do it.
Well, for again, I'll touch base on my main character. He was a loner, orphaned. He didn't, and that I used from my wife. She's an orphan. So I could see how that kind of makes you a little bit of a loner. And then put on top of all the extra stuff in life. So for me, I wanted to have more of my character. God, sorry, I'm taking the long way road to answer this question.
No, you're good, man.
I wanted to give enough of my character where you liked him at first. And then throughout the story, you learn more. Like, why did the AI choose this one person out of billions of people on Earth? Wasn't because he was going to a Dio concert. You know what I mean? At Dallas. There was a reason, something about this person resonated with this AI. And even that, with the AI as a character, he's not a computer as much as he is an actual sentient being with every right to exist as us. So there's that finding that friend, that confidant, that, so I wanted to make it where their character just grows throughout the book. So at the end, when you realize what decision is made, you're not overly surprised by it. You'd be more surprised if he didn't make that choice. But I feel that's something you have to do throughout the storyline to show that relationship build. Like, yes, did he start as AI? Yeah, okay, AI, Then all of a sudden there's a friendship there. I'm like, wait a minute, they're more like brothers, Like, then this is a family unit, And that I felt was important to keep going and keep building. So I try to avoid, here's my dump on this person, and then hope they remember that for the next 1,200 pages.
Yeah.
You got me distracted, Gary. Now the only thing I can hear in my head is "Holy Diver, you can see his stripes and know it's clean." The one
I never
song,
listened to a lot of Dio, man. That was great.
well,
Still not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
yeah, I mean, I know it's off topic, but if you actually listen to the songs of that or the lyrics to the song, he must have been so high when he wrote that. It makes no sense. If you try to Google what that song means, the Google's just like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
That's
But
awesome.
The Google you've reached is out of service. Please try back later.
yeah, well,
But what a great song. And, and a lot of but that's the things, right? Like, how many books have you read that you're kind of like Starship Troopers? It's right out of there. Mm-hmm. Fighting bugs, totalitarianism on Earth. But it's such a good story. And there's so many valuable messages in it. Yeah. But it's just ridiculous if you think about it. And it's still a book I read every year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So let me see if I can see the stripes, because I know they're clean, as the song says. As far as, like, my main character is concerned, I like to keep it, I said, like to keep it simple, but I also, like, for example, the main character in my current project, he starts off being a very young man. He has no life experience, and that's part of his journey. That's where he's at. We all started somewhere. Like, Gary was a young private, Brent was a young firefighter fresh out of the academy. We all start off being lost, confused, disoriented, and I try to capture all of that. Mm-hmm. Because that's what it starts off where the guy's been in the Marines. He's barely been out of boot camp for 6 months. So he's a private, basically, private first class when it starts off. And you have to capture what's going on in his head. The fear, the indecision, the lack of experience, the overwhelming, holy crap, this is combat, this is real. Mm-hmm. And you build your character around that experience because the story starts off with a combat scene, his first ever insertion into combat. But then you spend the rest of the book writing about the aftermath. How does he adapt? Yeah. How does he deal with it? How does he adapt to, in the story, 3/4 of the squad get wiped out on their first mission. So now he's a PFC thrust into a team leader role that he's not equipped to handle. So that adds the stresses, and it creates more opportunities to develop that character and bring in more emotion and bring in more relatability. So that's what I was trying to capture. Now, I don't know if that's going to answer your question at all, Brent.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Do you guys remember, and when you were talking about this, it made me think about this, but your first experience with, whether it be combat or your first fire experience or whatever, for me, it was, I remember being the 18-year-old kid that I had just been through my basic whatever, right? Your academy level stuff. And then you go on your first actual incident, your first big fire, your first big whatever. And I remember going in with the guy in front of me, and I'm thinking, I hope this guy knows what he's doing, right? Like your drop trooper's got to be like, I hope these guys know what they're doing because I'm a dead man if I don't, right? And here I am crawling into this building, and you got it's just like, I mean, Backdraft did a pretty good job showing some of that, right? Where it's like the smoke's rolling over your head, you can't see your hand in front of your face. Yeah, it's just one of those, like, this is super dangerous, and if I get a breath of this, I'm a dead man. And I remember just crawling, like I got the hose line, got the guy behind me, and we're going in, we're doing the thing. And luckily I had a really great mentor who was behind me and kind of pushing me through stuff. but those are, you think back to when you're 18, 19 years old, and those are the defining characteristics of somebody that like your character, right? Like when I'm sure you guys both approached your jobs significantly differently at the end of your careers than you did at the beginning of your careers, right?
Oh,
And you probably moved into those mentor roles and those whatever. And having the ability to write both of those, I think, is really impressive. And I think it's something that as young authors maybe lack some of that sometimes because they haven't had that full experience of life like you guys have.
Well, I find like with mine, because you use the word mentors, and I love that. I was lucky. I've had some amazing mentors in my life, but equally lucky, I've had some horrible mentors in my life. And I find some of those horrible people are great characters in my book.
Yes.
And I specifically wrote them where there's no way they if they read it, they'll know that I'm talking about them. But there's enough change where there's no way anybody else would.
Right.
And if you know that's you, then you know you were a shit leader.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's also enough of them where I feel that if they're reading it, they'll go, I remember telling them that.
Do you find
I remember that conversation.
Do you find yourself using those people to almost teach those lessons through your book, right? Some of the things that you learned,
yes and no.
Maybe on the negative side of those people.
So here's the thing. The reason, I'm sure I touched on it, but the reason why I started writing was I was medically released, pretty messed up in the head, not a happy person. I wasn't actually even a nice person. I was just miserable, right? And I really started listening to Audible a lot. And then my therapist is like, you should start writing a book. So I did. No clue what I'm doing, and I'm writing. And that's when I realized all these wonderful people I've met throughout my life. Some fantastic, some horrible, but they all have taught me lessons. And a lot of these lessons I can put into these books. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
So when I started writing, like my next series is pretty much more sci-fi, stuff like that. But this series was me. Like, these are my experiences. This is how I'm dealing with PTSD. This is how I'm dealing with recovery, a different direction that I never thought I would take in my life. And it's been a complete way to not only acknowledge those who helped me, but also in a weird way, appreciate those who tried to hurt me at the same time.
Yeah.
So long story short, that is how my characters began for developing for me, which then gave me the tools where I'm sure Will had reached a while ago, where he can just personally make up a character, use a couple of personal things, but essentially that's a character all of his own creation.
Well, the nice thing about humans, and that's why I'll fully develop the antagonist, and I'll fully develop the protagonist, and I will, to a lesser degree, develop the main characters in a character Bible before I even put anything to the screen. But all humans are going to be human. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a sci-fi setting, if it's a romance setting. Human nature.
Romance will be way too human.
Yeah, human nature is human nature. Now, combat brings out the darker side. Romance can break out the darker side. It really depends on how you execute. But all fiction is the same. Humans are predictable, and they'll always be humans. Human nature, that's what fiction really is in my mind, as a study of human nature. Because without it, you can't tell a story.
It's a fantastic way to put it.
Will, have you ever found yourself, and I've had this happen a couple of times now, where you have a character that surprises you, or maybe a character that just literally comes out of the woodwork that you're like, where the hell did that person come from?
Yes, or you develop a character so well, you realize that your outline becomes rendered useless because you're like, wait a minute. You go to the outline and you're like, okay, so the character is supposed to do X, Y, and Z, but the character that I've established doesn't want to do X, Y, and Z. because their motivations are this or their experience is that. And that creates a problem. When you breathe life into them, they have a life of their own, and you have to make it work within your story. So there's many times I've had to adjust my outline to accommodate for that, and it's a very common problem. But that's a good sign that you develop that character well. When you can't control a character and you're the writer, that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm. I had a character at the end of book 2. I had my main character. Garrett is he's stolen this ship. He's heading off. He's doing this thing, and literally out of like I'm typing this and it's going through my head at the same time. Out of the passageway comes a character called Alexandra Popov, right? Like, I don't like, oh, who's she? Where did she come from, right? And it was just one of these things where I was like, oh, what a cool character. Like, I am so glad that this character is, because it really set up book 3, and it gave a lot of reasons for why different things were happening. And, subconsciously, I think my mind knew she was there all the time. I didn't know it, right? So when it popped out on page, I was like, this is freaking awesome. Like, this is so cool. I can't believe, like, somebody else is writing this. It just happens to be my hands that are doing the keyboard thing. And, so, that was one of the most enjoyable things. Oh, go ahead.
No. I just wanted to ask you a question about a character. So when you're done telling your story, I just want to ask you one about one of your other characters.
Just super enjoyable for me to do that, right? And it was one of the highlights of my short writing career, was having that ability to, like, to my hind brain working with my front brain and pushing that character out there. So that's all I had to say.
Because I had the privilege of reading your first book, and your main character, you had him go through some loss, and you had him go through a lot in like part 1 of that book.
That's a good thing.
And oh, it's amazing. I'm like reading going, man, I wish I could have done that. Not would have, could have, because my writing's not at that level yet. And but then I was like, and I meant to ask you, like, where did that come from? Like, was that a bit of realism, or were you just looking to have that hook as a character that's...
Yeah. In writing Outland Stars, the first book, one of the things that I really wanted to do was, there's a couple reasons I did what I did. Number one was I wasn't sure I had the chops to write a good science fiction book. So I thought, you know what, if I set this in a setting that I kind of understand and know, I can get away with more stuff. Right. And so by setting it kind of in like maybe a 1930s kind of Western kind of thing, I'm familiar with that. I know some of that. So I'm allowed mentally to kind of go there and understand what's going on. So that was an easy setting for me. And then it started me down the road of, well, what does that look like for a character, and how do they interact with their environment, and what are the difficulties that he has to deal with day to day? And one of the biggest pieces of writing advice I was ever given, and I don't even remember who told me this, it's been said a number of different ways, was put your character in the deepest, darkest hole that you can possibly put them in, and then have them crawl out, right? Have to find a way out. And so that's what I did with Garrett James. Was I wanted to put him in a position where he had no other option than to follow the path that he wanted to go on, right? And that's, you can call it hero's journey. Perfectly. Thank you. You can call it hero's journey. You can call it whatever. But I wanted to really give him not an option to do. He had to do what he did, and that was kind of a driving force behind what I did with that character. Because if I would have given him options besides the ones that he had, it would have been very easy for him to be, nope, I'm just going to go run my dad's business and do my thing and do whatever. And by being forced to do that, it took away his ability to not grow. I guess that's the best way to put it.
No, it was well done, because this is, sorry, because essentially, if he would have done that, his life would have been a lot shorter too.
Sure. Absolutely.
So go ahead, Will. Sorry.
No, it sounds to me like, I hadn't read it, but it sounds to me like during the hero's journey, you kind of denied him the ability to reject the call, per se. Yeah. You had him boxed in. And
and I wanted Oh, go ahead. Go, Will. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying it's very similar to the main character in my current project. He didn't have a choice. His entire life he was born and bred to fight.
Yeah.
So,
because when you guys agree that the reluctant hero is a bit overdrawn?
I think it's still a valid archetype, but at the same time, it really comes down
in
to
its current form. Sorry, in its current form.
It really comes down to execution.
Yeah.
Because you can write a story that's just a predictable rehashing of other stories in the past, or you can dig deep into your imagination and build the consequences or build the scenario around it to where you're not really masking the hero's journey, but you're giving it a new flavor.
Right.
So you can do that, but it's been done so many times before. You really gotta ramp it up, add tension, create problems, have that character, kind of like what Brent did with his main character, put him through the ringer. Readers actually enjoy seeing a main character being put under a lot of pressure because.
Now, with that, Will.
Yeah, go ahead.
You wrote a character that blew my mind, and Ramus. Thank you.
Yeah.
He was a horrible, horrible, evil character.
Yeah.
And how you managed to take somebody who, I don't want to use the Darth Vader reference because all Darth Vader did was just throw the Emperor over a thing and all of a sudden he's good again. You actually had this guy go down a path of redemption. Even knowing he wasn't going to be redeemed, but at least was somewhat redeemed by readers, including myself. That was such a unique path you took, when in reality, every other book would have just had somebody just drop around it in between the eyes. So I have to ask, what, in your development of that character, what made you, instead of just offing him, made you want him to be in your full story?
Well, because I wanted him to be the pinnacle of human evil. Because, backstory, he was involved in capturing soldiers and service members and selling them off into slavery to finance this resistance effort. And I was like, why don't you challenge yourself to give this guy a redemptive arc? And how do I do that? Well, it can't be done overnight. It had to be done throughout the length of the entire trilogy. And it was a slow walk, and I think that was deliberate because of the extent of his crimes and the way that you try to frame him as being this guy that you identify as wanting to hate. How can you possibly redeem him? And you redeem him by giving him something that is humanizing. In this case, he was a father. And no matter what evils he committed, he was still a father who loved his daughter and was dedicated to her. He had lost his spouse, and his daughter was the only thing he had left in the world. And she was the motivation that brought him out of that dark place and sent him on that path. She was the segue. I never even intended to create her as a character, but I knew I needed a segue into his redemption arc, and I plotted that over the course of 3 books. So that was deliberately planned.
That's awesome.
I can tell you straight up, that was one of the best ways to treat a villain I've ever seen, ever. I thought that was completely unique, and I also wanted to bring it up because I want other people who hear this, like, read it, because it's military sci-fi is more than just big strong man gets new kit and AI hooked in and goes fight war. There's so much more to it. And Will, what you did with your series there, man, you hit that right on the nail on the head there, because you hated this guy. because I hated the guy. Like, I'm like, man, I can't wait. This guy's going to get it dirty, you know? And then all of a sudden it's like, what? No, here's a gun. I'm like, that's awesome.
Well, the gun didn't come till later. It was a fight for him to get it.
But still, you let him keep it.
Eventually, Gary, when it was needed.
Your main character, Gary, has a pretty unique relationship with an AI.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that and how you were able to develop really both of those characters, and kind of grow and expand them through their interactions with one another.
You're gonna make fun of me. I'm a loner by nature, and I talk a lot to myself, and I think a lot, and when I was thinking of Gabriel, this AI, I didn't want to be like, as much as I love the X-Force books, I didn't want a Skippy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't want a sarcastic, smart-ass AI who always is the smartest thing in the room. I wanted to make an AI that is human as well. Like, yes, it's incredibly intelligent. It has all this knowledge at its disposal, but it failed at one point. And that failure had it questioning everything. And how would that look at that quantum level, if you will, of sincerely, literally an AI with a low self-esteem, but bent on fixing mistakes of the past. Essentially, Cain and Gabriel are just the same two lost souls dealing with their own stuff. And together, and as we've all met people in our lives, you have a conversation with one person, man, it's all right, but you could have the same conversation with another person and it's completely life-altering.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to make it where, a spoiler, debut novel spoiler, right? Like, I don't think too many people are going to be upset here. When Gabriel abducted Cain and started all this augmentation on him, it was to solve a problem. But then after doing so, he then also, by happenstance, created one of his best friends, to the point where they even defend each other.
Yeah.
And so my point of that was, no matter how alone you are, which I'm sure the three of us have felt, and people watching this have felt, there's always going to be somebody there. There's always somebody going through something worse, and there's always this and that. So instead of making it a competition of, oh, well, I did this and you did this, made it, okay, well, we're both broken. Let's just keep going forward. And that's essentially what it did. Gabriel gave Alex a purpose. And then in doing that, Alex gave Gabriel family.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And like a fun fact for the name, Alexander is my son's name. And Cain, I think, is one of the most important names in history. Because who was Cain? Right? The first murderer.
Right.
And I've just always loved that story because it also goes down to human jealousy. It's a very human name. I don't think you can get more of a human name than Cain. And that's what I was trying to go for, was what's a good, solid human name that shows strength, weakness, everything. And that to me was that name.
That reminds me.
I was just going to segue because names are hard to come up with sometimes.
Well, that reminds me of Admiral Cain and Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. It's always interesting to hear the backstory of the little tidbits of a character that most people probably wouldn't catch. But
right.
as the author, you're like, well, I pulled this because I liked this specific thing, or like that Alexandra Popov I was talking about. So Popov, if you've ever read Popov's Private Army, Alexander Popov was a guy in World War II that fought in Tunisia. I think he was originally a Dutch citizen, ended up fighting for the British Army. Really an interesting kind of character that I just thought, this is what a cool backstory to have with that. No one's ever going to know that besides myself, right? But if you go back and you're a student of history and you go back and you read that stuff, I pulled a lot of her characteristics from Popov, and that's one of the things that I love, those little Easter eggs that people have for stuff. The name Kane, the name, Popov. Those are just, they're so cool to have things like that.
Well, one thing I find with my characters, for example, so in my first series, 2 characters are real. Scott Hordecki is a friend of mine. We've been friends since we were no-hook sappers in the military. He's a great, beautiful human being. And I wrote the book. And when I wrote the book, I had no intention of publishing it. I just wrote a book. And then then Athon said, yeah, we want it. So I'm calling up Scott going, hey, I used you in a book. More of a, are you okay with that? And he goes, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, man, he goes, well, what's my character? I said, oh, well, you're a fighter pilot. He goes, dude. And he was like, so happy that I did that. So I'm like, okay, cool. You're cool with it. He goes, 100%. And I'm like, all right, I recorded the conversation. And then my second real character was Malcolm Denny. He's a hero in the book. And the reason why I did that was he passed of cancer. And he was such a good person and had such a love of life, like he was retiring from the military after like almost 40 years of service. Like that's ridiculous amount of time to dedicate to one's country.
Yeah.
And he was going to tour Scotland and do all this stuff. And as he was doing his medical clearance, they found a tumor and he had stage 4 cancer. So the way he passed was not the way he deserved to pass, in my opinion. And there's nobody's fault. It's just the way life happens.
Yeah.
But I thought in my book, I could actually send him out in a blaze of glory. Something that I think he would get a kick out of. But other than that, I don't use real characters.
Well, in my Battle Space Nomad series, one of the operators was Todd McCarty. And he started his military journey as not a special force, security forces for the Air Force, and then transitioned to the Army to go special forces. And he's a real person, and that was his real life journey. And I put it in the book as a complete
That's
prank.
awesome.
As a complete prank. I didn't know the guy.
Oh no?
No, but my technical advisor did. He served with him.
Oh wow!
My technical advisor's retired Green Beret. That's how I built the whole Special Forces selection. That whole section of the book where he goes through Special Forces selection process is based off of my technical advisor's firsthand accounts. Whole thing. I wrote it as almost not really verbatim, but I had to change this, that, and the other.
Sure.
It was basically a realistic journey. And this Todd McCarty ended up getting a signed copy of the book and had no idea who was in it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And he thought it was the best prank ever.
I was going to say, does he still know he's not in it, or did he?
No, he knows now, and he's actually a fan of the series.
Oh, that's great. That's got to be a nice vindication for you,
real people. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Gary.
Oh, I was going to say, it just must be a really nice vindication for Will to have done that and then have the person that he emulated in the book appreciate being emulated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. You guys, we talked about putting people in our books, right? And there's a couple of different ways that we talked about doing that. One is using kind of their essence to define a character. The other one is red shirts, right? Like, have you guys put in red shirts in your books, like where you got somebody who's like, oh man, I want to be in your book. And you're like, great, I'm going to use you, and you are cannon fodder that's going to die in this battle, right? Or whatever. How do you guys use red shirts? And do you find yourself, is there ever a red shirt that started off as a red shirt and then they become a major character?
Now, for me, I had one guy who was like, well, how come you put Decky in and not me? And I'm like, okay, well, we haven't talked for 10 years. That might be a reason. But but cool, you're excited about it. So what I did is I just put it where him and Decky were doing this flight around the asteroid belt and stuff, just doing like a race. It's kind of like a promotion thing. And the joke is if you lose, you don't get your promotion. And it's just them just shit talking each other the entire time, which is what they do in real life.
Okay.
And then I just kind of ended it there. I don't, personally, I know where my story is. I don't like my Bibles are made, my characters are made. I haven't had the experience like you had where this character just came in and ended up being a big character yet. But I try to stay away from certain aspects because honestly, I don't want anyone to sue me.
Sure.
You know? Like,
sure.
I don't understand the world that well. So if I start dropping people in there, especially if you're putting them in a negative light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're just opening up a door. That's like the bad leaders and the negative people that I had in my life. If they read my book, they'll know that's them, but they won't know it's them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's no way anybody's going to go, this is this person, you know? Because, and so it's fun to put a real person in as almost like a homage or a thank you for what you've brought to me. But I don't think it's worth it than you having a list of people who want to be in your book as NPCs, or they're upset that they're just an NPC or a red shirt. You know what I mean? It's like, well, it doesn't match the story. So
sure.
The last thing you really want is to open that invite. I'm sure, Will, you've probably had some past brothers in arms going, how come you didn't put that time we did this in? Or what about this time? You know?
Well, in my case, I don't do red shirts at all. I want any losses to feel real. I want the void
to be felt.
Yeah, I want the void to be there. And that's an opportunity for development for the surviving characters to have to adjust and adapt and go through all those emotions and let the reader experience that through their eyes. Mm-hmm. So that's why I don't do red shirts or somebody. Now, if there's a character that I intend on killing off because it's part of the story, then yeah. But I wouldn't necessarily call that a red shirt. A red shirt is somebody you write purposely to be disposable, but I have a hard time doing that without making it obvious.
Yeah.
So I go for the emotional depth instead of running the risk of being too campy, per se.
Right.
I saw a funny video that you just made me remember it's like a Star Trek spoof. There's three guys on the transporter, and the guy's like, all right, so what's your job? I'm the science officer. What's your job? I'm the lead person. What's your job? I'm security. How many times have you done this? Countless times. The other guy, countless times. You, it's the first time. What's your name? I'm John. What's your name? I'm Phil. What's your time? Oh, they call me Skippy. You're like, get off there. Why? You have a nickname. It's your first time, and you're security. You're not going.
You're done, bro.
We'll go on the next one. So, because that's the other thing too. You don't want to make the red shirt obvious that like, oh, that person's gonna die.
Right.
I hate when somebody kills the obvious person.
The way I do red shirts, and I had I sent a really early version of my book to my cousin, who really he's a sci-fi nerd, really wanted to read it, and he's like, hey, can you put me in here? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. So I went back through, and basically one of the bad guy minions that wasn't named, didn't really do a lot in the book. I went back through and just named him Rowley, right? Like I just gave him a name, threw it in there, Rowley. And now my cousin's, in my book, and it didn't change my storyline. I didn't edit anything other than just to name that character and then kill him off. Right. So, I think it's definitely worth paying homage to people. Like if you have guys that just want to be in the book, I think it's cool to do that kind of stuff. I'm not going to change the way that my book is written for that, but I will throw people in if I have the option to do it without making major story edits. Right?
To be fair though, Rowley fits your John, like the characters that you write.
Sure. Yeah.
Like if it was Ian Smith.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Bartholomew Witherspoon, right? Probably wouldn't have been the name that would have fit in there. So, one other thing that I kind of find interesting, and this was I don't know if it was Jeff Haskell that started this, but the Richmond field, the field that like separates outer space from the dock or whatever, that's named after Lisa Richmond, right? And I love the fact that like I think all of us and a number of other sci-fi authors have used that term now, right? Like, so Richmond Field is a real thing that exists in sci-fi because of Lisa Richmond and kind of her background of. Yeah.
I have
just think
not
that's
yet,
awesome.
but it's I know it's coming because it's such a great term.
Yeah, super fun to kind of have that little Easter egg that if you know on the background, it's across multiple authors now that are using that term. So,
and for the record, her writing name is L.L. Richmond, and she is a fantastic male sci-fi author. So,
yes,
if you're listening to this and you're curious, go check her out.
That's the one thing I do love about this world is in a world where everybody's so consumed with gender and everything like that, we have people writing that you would never believe were writing these stories. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with gender or who they are or where they're from. These are just human beings writing fantastic stories.
Yeah, she is one of those people that I've met her a couple times, and when you walk into a room and you feel instantly like you're not necessarily dumber, but you know that there are people that are way smarter than you, right? Like,
dude, that's every room I walk in. I feel that when I go to Costco.
I walk around my normal day thinking I'm pretty intelligent, and then I get in a room with like Lisa or something, and I'm like, okay, I need to reevaluate. my scale goes farther than I thought it did, and I am not on the I am more in the bell-shaped curve rather than on the far edge of it. So
look at our friend Will here. He looks like
Lisa sent me an outline to look at, and I knew I was out of my depth.
Yeah,
absolutely out of my depth.
And that brings up a good point, Will.
Well, I mean, she writes for the Hallmark Channel, for crap's sake. All those Christmas movies that are all the the businesswoman from the big city goes back to the small town and links up with the football player, the high school, that kind of thing. She writes
the guy that runs the candy cane factory at the
You want to know a fun fact? About 30 minutes outside of Ottawa is this little town called Almont. It's known for two things: amazing donuts, and every single Hallmark movie is filmed there.
Wow.
Every single one of them.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you go for the donuts and hope to be an extra.
Hey, so I got one more question that I want to end with, and I think you guys will have great answers for this, and if you don't, that's fine. But
no
if
pressure.
you jumped in an elevator, you have 10 seconds to give somebody the best advice on character development. What kind of advice do you have for that person? They're a brand new author, and they're looking to make their characters real.
Well, I'd say first is just make them real. Don't try to write a pretend character. Write a real character. Flaws, personality. Even like I have a character that I'm developing right now has a speech impediment. All these things that aren't just makes the character a bit more relatable to the reader. Just not the same person in the same voice all the time, and making each person that unique person.
Okay, so scenario is, as you explained, elevator, start to go down, got 10 seconds, give advice. That's a lot of pressure, Brent. I would say spend a chapter looking through that character's eyes, bouncing off their environment, bouncing off other characters. Spend some time in their eyes with tunnel vision. What do they see? What do they feel? And that character will actually inform the writer who they are.
Mm-hmm.
That in 10 seconds, that's all I got time to really say.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't start calling this stuff deep thoughts with Will.
Deep thoughts with Will Handy.
Jack Handy.
Jack Handy.
Have you ever been in a room and some black thing just flew across the room and latched onto somebody's throat? and and you just say, "Hey, what is that thing?"
Glad it's not my throat.
Yeah, exactly. That's not my throat. That's a total Jack Handy thing to say right there.
I've clearly walked into the wrong room.
I think mine would be exactly what Will mentioned at the very beginning of this, right? When we first started talking about it, is what does that character look like at their best and what's it look like at their worst, right? Because that ultimately defines that character. They will be on that spectrum somewhere between best and worst, right? But if you know how they're going to act at the worst time and you know how they're going to act at the best time, you start defining their motivations and you really make them into somebody that that you can pick where you want to be on that spectrum and then write that character. And I think that's a really cool thing. What else we got, boys? Is there anything else we want to cover today? I know Will's got a thing he wants to kind of wrap up with like he normally does, but anything else from anybody?
I think we hit it pretty good today on the character development. We could probably do 5 more episodes on character development, but I think this is a great way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with no further ado, let me get my reading glasses on so I can do this properly.
Deep Thoughts by Will. Here we go.
Yeah. When a creature enters the room. So today's tip is write your first draft like no one will ever read it. And what does that mean? The key takeaway is get to the end. Get to the end of your story. You have an outline. You have an idea. You have your character arcs. You have your hooks. Don't overthink them. Get to the end. Just keep writing. When you stop and question your prose or question your pacing or question your character development, or is this plot, moving forward steadily? That's what revisions are for. That's what the editing process is for. And like self-editing as you go along, that's really just to clean up the manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
That's not for continuity or flow, that kind of thing. Wait until you're done. Get the story finished, because it's only when you have a complete story that you can learn from those different aspects of, okay, this character's arc from start to finish is this. Well, if you don't get to the end of the story, you haven't given that character the opportunity to grow. So don't second guess yourself while you're writing the character. Keep on going to the end. Get that first draft done and then worry about the revisions. Don't get stalled by trying to make sure everything is perfect. Like I said, write your first draft like nobody's ever going to read it, so you don't feel self-conscious and be like, oh no, this is crap. Fix the crap later. Get to the end.
Yeah.
And would you say, Will, because that's a great way to put it, by doing so, you actually also get to understand your characters more, and it takes you away from that tunnel vision of writing. Like, how many times did you say you read one book before you were ready to send it out?
Oh, good Lord. I typically reread a chapter after I write it. Yeah, and that's just before the first pass. And that's just really, for me, just a quick flow check. Make sure and if it's not perfect, I don't worry about perfection. I'll make a few adjustments and then move on and let the editor catch what I miss. That's what they're there for.
One thing I did on the second book that I didn't do on the first book, and I wish I could remember who told me it or where I heard it, is don't read it to yourself. Read it out loud. Reading your chapter, reading your writing out loud forces you to hear it in a different light, which what I found hugely beneficial. Even though you feel kind of weird sitting by yourself in an office reading out loud to yourself.
Oh, you do it by yourself. Yeah. I tell you what, that was an awkward Christmas dinner.
When the turkey's cold and Will's on chapter 7, people were like, all right, let's wrap this up.
This is the longest prayer ever. Instead of amen, it's to be continued. What?
Gary, take us out of here.
Guys, thanks once again for an amazing episode. I know writing, we all write our own thing, but the amount I learned from both of you guys, even when Will's not paying attention, is worth its weight in gold. And
my wife was leaving for work, so I was making sure to say goodbye properly.
Well, should have gave her a kiss, man. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys enough. The amount of information I learned just from talking to you two, I hope our listeners get the same benefit that I get from just being able to call you guys friends. And if you enjoy us, please like us and subscribe us. And we're going to keep on bringing you as much stuff as we can. I know I can tell you for June, we will have another special guest, a narrator, and we may have some more, but right now that's how it goes. So tune in to find out who we have on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you want to close it out with a quick rave.
What? A rave?
Yeah. Gary, grab your boom mic. Get to tapping.
Boom, 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 boom. Dance, boom, 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 boom.
All right, I'm cutting you off.
Dance.
We'll see you guys later.